Hello and welcome to the Musicians Weekly, volume 32. What is the state of contemporary classical music today? I have just been to a concert, and the opening piece was by British composeress Anna Klein, living in the United States, born in 1980. And it's a piece modeled on some quotations and manipulations of motifs from the Il Distratto Symphony by Joseph Haydn. Now, I am not at all against humor in music, but this is very superficial humor. It's just, if you call it humor at all, it shall be joking. So she tries to bring into interaction some Haydn things and some very virtuosic circus-like orchestra showpiece qualities. And this is a kind of pure entertainment. But entertainment not in a way that you are really well entertained. It's more a kind of sound effect, just to try to build up some cheap surprises. And you could say it's not written in a bad manner. She knows what she does. She has some kind of orchestration, some kind of ideas. But all these ideas are secondhand, of course. And we are now in contemporary music at a point where even it's not anymore a question of originality. There has been in the 20th century, first of all, the idea of throwing away all the old tradition after the Second World War. And there was the dominance of 12-tone dodecaphony and of serialism. And then many composers freed themselves partly from that. And then we had the movement against that, which was Fluxus and aleatory and all these things. And so, but all these things were kind of convictions composers had and fighting struggles about which system they have and to define themselves by the idea of originality. I want to write something nobody else ever has written. And of course, now young composers have given up mostly this idea, as far as I can see. Some still try, but many try to entertain you simply. Also, Jörg Wittmann, German composers, a bit more original, we could say, but trying to do just jokes with the orchestra and crazy things, which is one of the most important things, just to do crazy things, because artists can do crazy things. So we have totally lost anything which can be called dignity or can be called aristocracy or nobility or spirit. It doesn't exist. Of course, you can say that Arvo Pärt represents dignity. Yes, but this is very one-sided. It's very kind of religious identity. Of course, always when there is religious identity and it is religious, it becomes also kind of dignity and of nobility. Normally. Of course, not always. But now we are at a point where they play around like children. We had the Siemens Music Prize this year where Simon Rattle got the main prize, and then there were 3 ensembles getting prizes for particular projects and composers. It was just a bad imitation of group improvisation and freaky things from the end of the 1960s or beginning of the 1970s in non-classical music. So things at that time which were totally new and were revolutionary are now taken up again like crap and put into classical music field, and suddenly the institutions who give these prizes and who think that they are at the forefront of development in the world of music, they give the prizes to this kind of recycling of revolutionary ideas from 50 years ago. This is a bad joke. And we have we in Germany, we have a lot of such composers and like doing some irony and some funny things like Moritz Eggert or Enno Poppe. Yeah, they will of course survive with this total superficiality. And they are also conducting, some of them, or doing music politics or many things. So they are businessmen in their own service and they are teaching. And so we have a kind of anti-spirit today in classical music or in contemporary serious music, whatever you call it. It's totally unserious. And I miss the spirit of real adventure. And I mean adventure with yourself, and not just adventure in playing around, in doing some unserious and funny and entertaining things. There is basically nothing to be said against entertainment. It was very funny when in the end of the 1920s, there was a conference of the ISCM, the International Society of Contemporary Music, and the German composers were talking about the difference between serious and entertaining music. And suddenly Ravel stood up, and Maurice Ravel, he said, I think every music is entertainment. But his kind of entertainment, with this kind of explosive inner forces, this volcanic and this extreme tenderness and this extreme beauty and this fantastic correlation of large form. Yeah, this, if you call this entertainment, okay, it's a very French attitude. It's also kind of understatement. And of course, we have entertaining aspects in the music of Mozart, of Haydn, of Beethoven, some of his music, definitely some of Schubert's music, Mendelssohn, Brahms, Dvorak, and so on. Of course, there's a lot. And we lost a bit this kind of entertaining qualities when the music went into so-called modernism in the early 20th century, and composers became very serious about their ideas. And so it became a kind of, we have to go totally to the core, and we have to make a revolution against anything that people liked. And okay, so maybe it could be a reaction against that, but now we are very late with that reaction, and it is now so cheap and so unimportant, all these things that are said by most of the young composers. There are, of course, fantastic exceptions. I think about this extremely gifted Italian composer Vito Palumbo. Vito Palumbo, also working with electronics and with devices, fantastic kind of organic shaping of sound. And then there's Benjamin Attaïr from France and from Moroccan and Lebanese origin, who is a real alchemist of composition and who is very promising. I mean, he might become one of the greatest composers of this 21st century if things don't go wrong. And in a piece like his string quartet Al-Asr, he already proved that he is able to do that. And so we have some composers of very high quality, but basically we have a very low standard, particularly very low spirits. We have so many people are technocrats. Then you can, okay, if they are technocrats, you don't expect anything for your soul. I mean, everything in the wake of Ligeti, speaking about, we don't like expressivity. We just have technical devices. We just have these haptic sound ideas and organized fields of structure in all these things. Okay, so you can do that. This is more like a kind of research work than real art. But why not? This can lead to some interesting results, and particularly can lead to some melting processes where some other composers bring together these elements with real musicality, like Per Hendrik Nordgren did when he took up some Ligetian influences and made something extremely expressive of it, with less technical concentration, but more real expressivity. And then, of course, we have composers like Caliviao, who are very virtuosic writers and very free writers, and chameleon-like, changing style from piece to piece in an extremely virtuosic manner. And we have these fantastic chameleons, like when you look back, Rodion Chetrin was chameleon. Gordon Sherwood, the American who went around the world and later he was in his late years, he was in Germany. He was a phenomenal chameleon. And we always have these chameleon composers again and again who are not the most original in the way that you always feel the origin of the music, but who are extremely flexible and fantastic technicians of music. But of course, there are not many who really have to say something totally original and who are masters of the craft. We have a lot of craft in British music, in US American music, in Russian music. They are more concentrated on craft than, let's say, in Germany, for example. In Germany, craft is, for composers, it almost doesn't exist today anymore. I mean, recently I heard some music by a composeress from Nuremberg, Ines Lödger, and she's totally serious. She's very tender and she's very powerful, and she has written some fantastic music, and I can only recommend to everybody here, make some commissions from her. You want to have female composers? Ask Ines Lödger in Nuremberg. She's really an original composer. And it's not necessary that we have so many composers who are fashionable, because this kind of fashionable way, it will be forgotten very soon. They will be played now and people think, oh, this is just lifestyle of our time, intellectual lifestyle, sensual lifestyle. But it's not really music. It's just only a fashion, a product, a byproduct of our time. And so we have this problem a lot with German composers. There is nothing, almost nothing here. There are some. I will mention them in a separate volume, because if I present them now, they are presented like enemies of the mainstream, and that makes no sense. The mainstream is just a nothing. It represents the worst sides of humankind today. And we are now in a time where mainstream means against humankind. Politically, ecologically, economically, artistically. We have to search for the originals again. And we have to understand that the trendy things are not the great things. There is, for example, a phenomenal composer French-Swiss composer, Laurent Métaux. He doesn't get commissions. And he's much better than 99% of all these composers around. Or than 99.9%, I would say. He's one of the greatest composers today, with a phenomenal dark and magic music. He has no haven where to go to. No place. He doesn't exist on the map of contemporary composers. This is unbelievable. How can this happen? So I can only tell you, look around for really great music and don't care at all for what people say, what experts say, what opinionists say, what publishers say, what impresarios say, what leading music business stars say. what is great music today? In almost every case, it is not great music. Sometimes it's interesting, sometimes it's funny, sometimes it's entertaining. Very often it's nothing of these things at all. And I don't think music is lost, not at all. But culture is lost. And the direction it has taken. So we can only look for the great individuals. And it is always the great individuals where you will find great music. And they are not established. You have to establish them in your view of things that are there. I will mention some of the composers in my commentary, and you can look up and listen to the music and forget about mainstream. Forget about what everybody tells you. It's worth nothing. Wishing you all the best.